What are the jobs of the investor? What is it that we do for a living? And I believe that there are two activities that investors engage in, and everything that we do falls under those two headings. The first is asset selection, and the second is cyclical positioning. Asset selection means simply owning more of the things that do better and less of the things that do worse. And cycle positioning means having more invested more aggressively at the right time and less invested more defensively when the times are less good. Everything we do, in my opinion, falls under one of those two headings. Now, another important question: are cycles dependable? And I think the key to understanding the question of whether cycles are dependable in economies and markets goes to a quotation from the American humorist and author Mark Twain, who said, "History does not repeat itself, but it does rhyme." Nowadays, people say to me, what about the current cycle? What cycle from the past is this the same as? And the answer is there is no cycle in history exactly like this cycle. There are similarities, but there are also differences. Every cycle is different from the others in terms of the amplitude of fluctuations, the duration of the fluctuations, and the speed of the fluctuations. They're all different. History does not repeat. Similarly, there are differences in the causes of cycles and the effects of cycles. Never are they the same. But there are certain underlying trends that do tend to repeat. There are trends, as Mark Twain would say, that rhyme from one cycle to the next. For example, what are the trends or themes in a bull market that tend to recur? I've lived through about a half a dozen significant bull markets in my 50 years of experience, and as far as I can see, most of them have been characterized by an excess of optimism, a shortage of risk aversion, and an excess of capital availability. Let's take those three themes together. And by the way, if you think about those three themes, number one, together they constitute a pretty good recipe for a bull market. And number two, without them, I think it would be very hard to have a bull market. So if we can understand that the recurring themes are optimism, shortage of risk aversion, heavy capital availability, then maybe we can recognize bull markets when they form and lighten up our positions so that we don't succumb when they decline. Now, as I said at the beginning, the subtitle of the book is Getting the Odds on Your Side. And I hope you will think about that concept. And if you don't take anything else away from tonight, I hope you will take away the concept of getting the odds on your side. The market, in my opinion, in my view, the market is a lottery. There's a bowl, and the bowl contains a large number of tickets, and each ticket is a possible outcome. Of the tickets in the bowl, of the possible outcomes, many different ones can be drawn, but only one will be drawn. That's the way a lottery works. From the full range of outcomes, one outcome materializes. Now, in my opinion, assets which are priced below their intrinsic value, that is to say bargains, are potential winning tickets. Assets which are priced above intrinsic value, that is to say excessively high, those are potential losing tickets. And in the bowl, there will be potential winners and potential losers. Which ticket is chosen, that is to say which of the many outcomes will occur, is influenced by the merits of the situation, the fundamentals of economics and profits, but also by emotion and by randomness. And of course, there's a lot of luck in investing. So what everybody wants to know, where are we? I'm sure that half of you came here tonight to hear me tell you where we are. And to use a baseball terminology, I believe we're in the 8th inning. Now, that's pretty close to the end, and you might take that as cautionary advice. There's only one problem. I've been saying 8th inning for a few years now, and the game hasn't ended. I realized a year or so ago that in baseball, a standard game consists of 9 innings. So if somebody says we're in the 8th, and if they would be correct, that would mean that the game is about to end. And of course, if the bull market is about to end, we want to start reducing our risk and taking our chips off the table. The problem is that this is not baseball. And in investing, there is no fixed number of innings. So even if we were in the 8th inning, even if I was correct in that statement, the game could go 9 or 11 or 14. So we never know for sure when the game will end.
因为我们做价值投资啊，逆向投资的核心啊，就是要相信均值回归。那么均值回归呢，这个均值啊，这个定义呢，其实它也是一个比较难以量化的。举个例子哈，这个在成熟市场可能比我们的新兴市场要好一点。成熟的市场它有很长的历史，对吧？它的这个均值如果说算上100年，它就比较稳定。而我们的均值可能从历史的这个角度来讲，它就不够稳定。这是我们的一个困惑。那么另外一个呢，可以从绝对的这个角度，绝对估值的角度来思考这个问题。比如说，我们的风险溢价定在多少？因为无风险利率是比较公开透明，大家都知道。但是风险溢价定在什么位置是比较合适的，对吧？那么您觉得像中国，就是我们的估值中枢，我们的风险溢价应该怎么定？尤其站在现在看待未来，就是我们怎么去确定我们这个新兴市场，像中国这样的一个新兴市场的锚在什么地方
？Well, it's true that you have a relatively short history, and that for much of that history, your average PE ratio was quite high, and so you might expect the PE ratio to return to the norm, but that could be dangerous if it is unrealistic. So one thing that you might do is you might look at not only the historic valuation in China, but normal valuations elsewhere in the world. And if in the United States, the average PE ratio on the S&P 500 index, which is the main index, since World War II, that's 75 years, has averaged 15 or 16. So maybe China gets a bonus because it's growing faster and has such great possibilities. United States is a mature economy. China is still a high growth economy. So maybe your appropriate PE ratio is higher than the US, but the question is, should it be twice or 3 times the United States? And you might conclude that that's too high. Now, the problem, of course, is that if you're a China investor and the PE is 3 times the US, and if you say, no, that's too high, then you're out of business. So the question is, will you surrender all your positions? I would argue against that. But the point is, if the PE ratio gets back to 30 or 40, and in the US it's 15, and you say, well, China is 2 or 3 times, then maybe you want to reduce the risk of your portfolio and move away from your higher risk, high return positions and put more of an emphasis on less expensive, lower risk, lower return situations as an effort to be defensive. So we've been talking for the last 10 minutes about PE ratio, but PE ratio is only one thing to look at. You have to look at PE ratio. You have to look at growth potential. You have to look at the safety or riskiness of the product. Is it safe, or does it have, is it safe from competition, or is it likely to be attacked? I'll leave the audience with one thought. I had lunch with Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, around the time that my last book was about to come out. I discussed my theories in the book, and when I got up to leave the lunch, he said to me, just remember, none of this is meant to be easy, and anybody who thinks it's easy is stupid.
就是怎么去解读这个房地产周期啊？您前面讲到的，这个众多周期里面有房地产周期。那么中国居民家庭的配置大部分都是在房地产上面，配置房地产越多的，投资收益率也是比较可观。因为中国房地产就没有过熊市，美国上一轮次贷危机应该也是表明了房地产周期的结束。那么这一轮是不是这个10年的房地产也是在持续的上涨？接下来的话呢，这个房地产周期到底是怎么来表现？
Of course, there are a number of different markets within real estate. I think that what we call the gateway cities, the number one cities, New York, San Francisco, and so forth, and Boston, have become quite expensive. I'm talking about commercial office space. And for valuation in real estate, we look at something called the capitalization rate, which is the ratio of the income that a property produces to its value. And the capitalization rates in the gateway cities are quite low. People are eager to put money in. I think in many cases they're paying too much. And so the capitalization rates tend to range between 2.5% and 3 or 3.5%, which is, by our standards, quite low. We think we can get considerably more than that in the stock market or in credit and the kinds of things that I do. So our company is not involved in properties in the gateway cities. We're involved in the secondary cities. And the secondary cities don't have the same growth rates, don't have the same glamour or promotional content, but I think they can probably be invested in cheaper, better prospects, and safer. The U.S. home market was very strong coming out of the global crisis, largely because housing starts stopped. And so for a few years, not enough houses were built. When demand came back, we know that strong demand, weak supply equals rising prices. Prices did rise for a while, but now I think they have reached equilibrium, and now they're not rising much. So I think there are different aspects to the real estate market, but I would be careful about real estate in the gateway cities. And in many, you know, I live in New York, and in New York, for a few years after the global crisis, luxury real estate, top end, did extremely well. The trouble with that is that good price rises in the real estate market induce starts. So many luxury projects got put on the drawing board. Many will be completed within the next few years. If supply is very strong and the economies of the world soften, prices will not do well in that sector. So I would be careful. Thank you.
Based on my amateur experience as an investor, I noticed that it is as much mentally challenging as financially challenging to sustain these cycles. And could you please tell us how, as a young or new investor, what it takes to mentally prepare oneself to go through these cycles?
It takes emotional fortitude. It takes emotional strength. You have to, you know, investing is not like being an engineer and building bridges. an engineer, they tell him, we want to build a bridge, it's got to hold this many cars. He does his calculations, he comes up with the amount of concrete and steel, they build the bridge stands. It works every time. In investing, it doesn't work every time. We have many disappointments. The greatest investment in the world is probably right 65% of the time. That means he fails 35% of the time, and every other investor does worse than that. So the point is, you have to be able to live with ambiguity, because we don't know what the future holds. You have to be able to live with failure. You have to be able to live with difficult periods. No matter what a good investor you are, if you follow a disciplined approach, there will be periods when your approach is out of style. You have to get through the tough points. And then, of course, there will be periods when your style is very successful, and it's very important not to become overconfident and not to develop hubris and not to take on too much money and not to promise too much return. So I think that level-headedness and emotional stability, reasonable expectations, avoidance of hubris, these are the things that every investor needs, both the beginner and the expert.
我想跟霍华德先生一起来讨论一个确定性的问题，就是说霍华德先生怎么样去打造橡树资本？橡树资本呢，在过去的24年过程中取得了非常优秀的成绩哈。我想问霍华德先生，您有没有统计过，在您过去24年里边赚的这些钱里边啊，估计有最核心的几位同事，大概给你们赚的钱，在你们整个公司赚的钱的比重大概有多少？这是第一个问题。
To me, the key to having a great company is culture. With an explicit, reasonable, positive culture, I think you can get more out of people than individually. You can produce a group result which exceeds the whole. You know, one of the constants of management is that if you ask your employees what percentage of the success they created, and you add it up, it comes to about 150%. Everybody overestimates his contribution to success. I think that my co-founders and our senior-most investors are responsible for the vast bulk, as you say, maybe 60 or 70% of this year's accomplishments. But I think that one of their great accomplishments is that they developed the next generation who will create 70% when they're gone. And I think that you have to include the development of the next generation as an essential responsibility, or you will have great results this year, but then the company will end. Continuity is an extremely important responsibility. But I agree with you that in the short run, the seniors are extremely important.